Who will be the starting quarterbacks for every single team in the NFC over the course of the 2023 offseason? We've got trades, we've got NFL draft, and we've got free agent signings coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL on Twitter. Get those Wednesday mailbag questions in for tomorrow's episode there at our Twitter handles. Tag us both. Tag one of us. Either way, tag us both is better. At BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Today's episode of P&W is brought to you by Nissan. The only thing more exciting than the big game is the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya. There's only just a couple days, 3 days left, 4 days left until the Super Bowl. Are you ready? The Nissan Ariya, the EV for people who love to drive. Learn more at nissanusa.com. All right. If you missed yesterday's episode, AFC teams we covered yesterday, and we've already got blockbuster trades going here, Matt. And one of those blockbuster trades was Lamar Jackson leaving Baltimore. Neither one of us, and we each have our list of what we think will be the starting quarterbacks for these teams in 2023 when the QB carousel stops spinning. Both of us have Lamar Jackson going to the NFC, but we haven't revealed what team that is yet. Let's go to the East and start with the Dallas Cowboys. I assume it's not the Dallas Cowboys for Lamar Jackson, though, for you, Matt.
Correct. And this was fun yesterday. I'm excited to do the NFC. I thought we'd do the whole thing in one show. I'm glad we broke it up, spend a little more time with it. Not much time to spend with Dallas, though. I know some people are down on Dak, didn't play great in the playoffs, led the league in interceptions. This guy's a top 10 quarterback. He's very, very good. I think you can win the Super Bowl with him. I think there's, the part of the offensive coordinator changes is getting Dak back on track. But I have no concerns about this player.
And at the end of today's episode, you've got some tiers that you want to talk about how quarterbacks fit in the NFL. Dak's an interesting one with which tier he goes into because he's he's not top, but he's not, I don't think he's a middle tier quarterback. He's a really good quarterback, and that's why Dallas will be crazy to get rid of him. I think he can get better. He's not a perfect quarterback. I think they told us what they think, and that it was Kellen Moore maybe was the problem there. So new offensive coordinator in town. We'll see what it looks like for Dak here, but he's got to stop throwing the ball to the other team for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but I think he had 13 or 14 interceptions that led the league. It wasn't 30. I mean, I know it was most in the league, but we had a ridiculous number.
Is that the lowest number?
It has to be
because I'm thinking
ever lead the league.
Jameis Winston had 30 in a year, right?
Right.
It's always like we talked about just the Dallas Cowboys themselves. We talked about quarterbacks like Troy Aikman's in the Hall of Fame. He threw 14 interceptions every single year. He had more interceptions touchdowns a lot of years, and he's in the Hall of Fame. So the interceptions are way down in the NFL.
Way down. It's funny. I did a project a while back on Terry Bradshaw, comparing him to Ben. And like it boggles your mind when you look at like those 70s and 80s touchdown to interception ratio. Like it's like 50-50.
Hand the ball off or 7-step drop and chuck it somewhere. And hope.
And hope the corner doesn't pick it off. Right.
Yeah. New York Giants. What do you got? Starting quarterback. They have Daniel Jones, their current starting quarterback, is a free agent here.
Yeah.
Which direction do the New York Giants take here in year 2 under Brian Daboll?
I'm going to be boring and run it back with Jones. I don't know exactly how that mechanism works. What the contract looks like? Does he get franchised? I just think in the end, that's probably the best move for the Giants. But I also think it's a fragile situation. Like if you jump in the deep end with this guy on a 3 or 4 year deal, $35 million a year or whatever that you can't get out of, you may regret it in a big way. But you had success, and I'd love to see what he could do with, real wide receivers. And so I think they give it another try, but this is a little fragile.
I just can't see it. I think it's probably the most likely scenario that they
Yeah, that's
bring
what I
Daniel
went with.
Jones back, they bring Saquon Barkley back, try to build, and do that. But
They
I
might
just think
regret it.
that's a mistake. I think it's a mistake. If you're willing to give a quarterback money, do something bigger. And Matt, that's why I've got a blockbuster trade.
Oh my!
Lamar Jackson to New
Ooh, the
York.
Big
How
Apple.
about the New York market this offseason? Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, Lamar Jackson to the Giants. With
Wow.
the way Daboll can operate an offense, I would love to see him get his hands on Lamar Jackson because he's not afraid, clearly, to utilize a running quarterback, what that could look like. And, of course,
Yeah.
with everything you have to give up, it'd be a little bit harder to bring in the receivers you want to bring in. They've got some guys. Wan'Dale's coming back. You can still find those wide receivers outside of round one, and clearly they wouldn't have some round one picks for a while if they did a move like this. But I just love this for Daboll. I think if you're willing to pay a quarterback, go get yourself a quarterback that is a difference maker. I just think it's insane to throw money at Daniel Jones and really sign him as a starting quarterback. And
I love it.
I like it. I think New York goes big this offseason. And Lamar Jackson, I'm projecting to the New York Giants. Let's go.
Didn't even dawn on me. Didn't even consider that landing spot for Lamar, and I'm mad at myself I didn't. We'll get to my spot here in a bit, but Giants have a ton of cap space. I mean, it would cost some draft picks, obviously, but they have some linemen in place. Jackson would make those around them better. They could still go sign a receiver or trade for DeAndre Hopkins or Michael Thomas or somebody like that, and build something there. So that's intriguing. I don't dislike that at all.
It's the easiest way to, because you talk about building wide receivers, and yeah, that's nice. And so instead of adding like 5 pieces to your offense, add 1 piece to your offense, and instantly, how difficult is that to defend against Lamar and Saquon Barkley? And
say bringing Barkley back too.
Yeah, I mean, probably franchise tag Barkley.
Yeah,
Barkley's probably going to not want to show up in camp, but that gets a little bit dicey. And you know how paying running backs is like, oof, but
what a running game they could have with the
oh my God,
those two.
right?
Right.
And winning a little bit different. And I think that's the way you close the gap on the East more so than, Daniel Jones, and you add a receiver. How great is that going to be? How much better are you going to be than you were last year, even if you got a number 1 wide receiver in New York? So
your scenario definitely is a higher ceiling.
Yes, and also you mentioned the cap space, which is huge. So if you look at the teams with the most cap space coming into the offseason, it's the Bears by a lot. They're not going to be the landing spot for Lamar Jackson. He's not going to want to go there.
No.
They're not going to make that move. You've got the New York Giants. You've got the Houston Texans, which is kind of a dark horse. How about a crazy dark horse? The New England Patriots are top 4 or 5 in
they are, yeah,
in cap space as well. What about? Could you see that? New England Patriots swinging a move for Lamar Jackson?
I can see Belichick looking at it like, I hate playing against this guy, as a defensive mind. Like, boy, I've never had the game plan for someone like Lamar, and I hate it every time I have to. I want him on my side. Maybe.
That brings us to the Washington Commanders, man.
Yeah, okay. I thought we were going to say Eagles here, but whatever.
Oh, yeah, or Eagles.
But Eagles is an easy one. Eagles is Hurts. Yeah. And I think Minshew will leave, and I think they would be smart to get a facsimile of Hurts as their backup, a power running quarterback as opposed to a Minshew type. I don't know who that is. That might be a 4th round pick.
Yeah, bring someone in where you're not changing scheme if he gets hurt. And look, quarterbacks that run the ball a lot, and we've already seen him get banged up with the shoulder.
Sure.
You need to have a backup there for sure. But obviously, Hurts is the guy, and it really has taken off this year. It's been awesome to watch that development for Jalen Hurts with the Eagles. Washington gets a little bit more difficult.
They do. They're one of the toughest ones to me. Could that be a Carr landing spot? Could it be a Jimmy landing spot? I took a similar route and put Tannehill here, but I think we have to mention Howe, because I think there's something real with Howe. They've come out and said, we want to build around Howe. I don't think they're lying to us. I often think teams are lying in that scenario, but I don't think you could just walk into next year and be like, hey, Sam Howell, the 5th round pick to play 2 games next year, is our only option. So I'm going to say Tannehill is the bridge, but they want Howell to beat him out.
I've got Garoppolo and Carr going to some other locations, and Garoppolo's actually a good one here because apparently the reports were that last offseason Garoppolo would have been the the trade for Washington, but with his shoulder surgery, they opted to go to Wentz
Right.
instead. And obviously that didn't turn out great for them. And Wentz that is probably going to just get cut because the cap situation there is you're going to save a lot getting off of Wentz, even though you traded so much for him. But they got a little something in the 5th rounder in Howell, and Howell is the name on my list that I have for Washington as the QB1. And certainly they're going to bring somebody else in there. It could be in the draft. It could be Richardson, late in round 1. It could be, and how about that for a competition? Just say, go young and let them fight it out and see what you got there and hope you got your quarterback of the future. Or you bring in probably more likely a veteran, and someone like Tannehill, I think is a good choice. Someone like Dalton, someone like, Mayfield. There's a lot of names out there that I don't think you feel good about plugging into your number 1, but if they really like Howell, they saw him for a year, and there was a little something seeing him play for them at the end of the season.
Yeah, and to pull back the curtain, while we were doing the show yesterday, we were talking about Tennessee, and I realized I didn't put Tannehill anywhere. So as of the middle of the show yesterday, I had Howell plugged in here. So is Howell your choice? Is that who you have in the spreadsheet?
That's who I have.
Yeah, I almost did. Yeah.
I think I have Howell there, and actually kind of like it for the Washington Commanders. But certainly they could go a number of directions. There's some NFC teams here that it got really difficult with to try to figure out which direction they would go and get in their heads. And they're not in a great spot to get one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. But are they going to go big in the free agent market? Is there anyone, or in the trade market? Is there anyone that they can go get that makes a big difference? And so in the end, I landed on kind of internal options for some teams, including the Commanders.
No, I like that. I think it's a possibility. You can't just do Howell alone, though. I mean, he may be the answer who you put in at number 1. And I had him, like I said, yesterday, but you better bring in Mayfield or Dalton, or like you mentioned, somebody's better than
something else.
Yeah.
All right. NFC North, NFC South, NFC West. Who will be the starting quarterback for every team in the NFC? We've got it projected out as the quarterback carousel turns in 2023. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. It is not only easy, it is super fun, and you can play every day. That's why it's called Daily Fantasy. NFL, Super Bowl projections to play against. NBA, Major League Baseball getting going. NHL, PGA, college hoops. The tourney is almost here. Major League Baseball season's almost here. Spring training getting going here in February. We've got soccer, NASCAR, combat sports, MMA, boxing, cricket, you name it. Tons more projections available at Prize Picks, so you can play every single day. And all you do is you pick 2 to 6 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money. You're not competing against other people. You're not building an entire roster. It's just you versus those projections available. And all you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players to score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, and you are in the cash. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. So if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50 more to play with. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed up to the Locked On NFL channel on YouTube. That is the home currently of Peacock and Williamson, but might be some news on that front very soon. Tons of content all over the Locked On Podcast Network, and really make sure that you are tuned into your team's show here, covered every single day on the Locked On Podcast Network, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Moving on, Matt, to the NFC North. And we've got the Chicago Bears, who have kind of hinted where they're going with this. It's basically, do you draft a quarterback at 1, or do you stick with Fields and trade the other asset?
I think they stick with Fields. I think this is kind of an easy one. He showed me enough that would be my choice as well, build around him. I still think he has a longer way to go as a quarterback than people tend to realize, but I'm rolling with him. I love them coming out of Ohio State.
You've got to give him some weapons, and you've got to give him an opportunity to get better. But clearly there's some things he has to do. Time to throw is the big one. Can you hit your back foot and get the ball out where it needs to go? And he hasn't really proven he can do that consistently in the NFL. But his wow ability, his raw tools, he makes every single game. He makes an elite run, and an elite throw. He's got an arm. This isn't a situation where he's like, oh, he's not really even a good thrower. He's an amazing thrower of the football. So, yeah, I mean, you've got just an unbelievable amount of talent here to deal with, and you see that growth start to happen. We saw what Jalen Hurts did in year 3 for him, where there was questions. Like the Eagles were prepared with extra draft picks to maybe draft a quarterback this year. They were,
right.
Nobody was really sure with Hurts, but you saw the growth, and we start to see that with Fields. Like, what would year 1 and 2 Jalen Hurts have looked like with this Bears roster? Probably not.
Oh, exactly.
Right. So, I love this. You leverage that first pick, and hopefully for the Bears teams come calling, and you start to build this thing. You move down again, do whatever you can to collect picks and build the talent on this roster around Fields, and then reevaluate once he does have some talent to throw the ball to.
It's interesting you mentioned Hurts and the extra first round picks and all that just a year ago. If I were the Bears, though, I might keep that in the back of my mind. If I'm moving from one to wherever, I may want a decent pick next year just in case this gets off the tracks, Oh,
yeah. And if a team comes calling, that's what's going to happen. You're going to have an extra pick next year.
Yeah.
You might have an extra pick the year after that, too.
Yeah, exactly. So keep that in mind just as insurance.
Right. And if you're the Bears, you look ahead to next year and you think, well, there might be a better quarterback next year for us than there is this year anyway.
Possibly. I'm not blown away with this class so far.
Would you rather have Caleb Williams as a prospect right now than Bryce Young? I think Caleb Williams would go number 1 in this class.
I do too. I don't know enough about those guys, him and the North Carolina dude.
And we'll see. A year before, you always think you know something and ends up not.
It is every year,
Spencer Rattler was number 1, and I think in some people's mock drafts next year's mock a couple years ago. And it's like, oh yeah, that didn't turn out that way. So you never really know. But next year's class always looks amazing.
It always does. Grass is greener,
Detroit Lions.
They're going to roll it back with Goff, but they have that extra first round pick, and maybe you grab somebody like Hooker in the 3rd round, or Richardson falls to you. I think you're open to taking one, but don't have to.
I've got 2 columns in my spreadsheet, Matt, and the first column says Goff. The second column says Richardson. I think this is the perfect opportunity for the Lions to go get someone like Anthony Richardson to be that high upside player, sit behind Goff for a year, and maybe you build yourself just a juggernaut there with Jameson Williams and everything you're building there on the offensive side of the ball, and continue to add with that number 6 pick to the defensive side of the ball. And I will say, Matt, maybe they would have to draft him at 6 instead of 18, or I was going to give Richardson to Washington, because Washington's a couple picks ahead of Detroit. Detroit's at 18. I think Washington's at 16, but Detroit has all these extra picks. Leverage that. Go down from 6, go up from 18. Do whatever you have to do to build this roster, and you have all these extra picks for a reason. I think a quarterback should be a thought if the right guy is there, if the evaluation is there, and go make your own luck as it pertains to that. You don't have to do it, but you can do it. And I think it would be smart. And I think it would be a perfect landing spot for Richardson there in Detroit. So that's the way when I kind of like my draft brain on one side of this was projecting things out. I like Richardson to Detroit here, sitting behind Goff. I think it's the perfect opportunity for both of those.
I think that might be his best landing spot, if not one of the best, because he could totally redshirt. They got a great line. They got deep weapons. He can run the ball, bring that extra dimension. If I were him, I would love to land in Detroit.
Moving on to the NFC South, Matt, we got
to get the Packers and Vikes.
Oh, I forgot it. I'm sorry. I was skipping over the Kirk Cousins tier here. Kirk Cousins, Minnesota, right?
Yeah, I think so. But pretty soon you better start thinking about drafting somebody. They've ignored that. Well, Mon didn't work out. Yeah,
I've been thinking about that 2 years ago. So but it's kind of they're in the Cousins QB purgatory, and just don't see any way out of it right now, and doesn't feel like this is the off season for it. So yeah, I've got Cousins plugged in there to Minnesota, and we've already traded away Aaron Rodgers, both of us. So that means it's Jordan Love for the Green Bay Packers.
Yes, but I think they would be smart to bring in Minshew as well, or Winston, or Darnold. Somebody that's not super threatening. Jordan, this is you're the quarterback, but we're going to spend money on a number 2.
Just in case. And they know internally, maybe they don't even like Love. And if they traded away Rodgers, they're like, we're going to go sign Daniel Jones or something.
Carr. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Somebody that they think could be something of a starter for a short term. Maybe they don't even love Love. And who knows? Maybe it's still Rodgers comes back and it's Love that gets traded in all
Could
of
be.
this as well. Because it's weird that it's such an unknown still with Love, but he showed a little something last year, and so that was nice to see him on the field. And I think a lot of Packers fans feel better about the Love era starting in 2023.
Yeah, but the other wrench is you got to pick up that 5th-year option soon or not. You know, like you need to know these answers.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Right.
So the South is interesting to me.
South, yeah, and it starts with the Atlanta Falcons.
4 new starters in the South.
Woo! Love it. The Atlanta Falcons.
Atlanta?
Yeah.
I think that's Lamar. I put Lamar in Atlanta. Yeah.
Breaking news. You've got to trade.
We've thrown this out there for weeks. I think it's a distinct possibility. His speed in that dome, already have a running game in place. Try not to get rid of Pitts or London. If you have to move one of them, so be it. But he would be the biggest star in the building. You know, I think he would be a hit in that town for sure. I think it's a good fit.
I think it's a good fit. I think it's half a good fit. The other half is, I don't know. Like the reason I like the Giants better, and who knows how Lamar feels about where he wants to go, or who would, what team's willing to give the Baltimore Ravens the most, if this is actually something the Ravens would consider trading away Lamar Jackson. It feels like it's a definite possibility here. The Giants with Lamar feels scary and like they could be really good.
Yeah.
Atlanta with Lamar feels like there's still like so much work to do and not enough assets to go do that work.
They do have a lot of cap
space.
space.
That different, I guess.
I know, but one was in the playoffs, one wasn't.
Right.
It feels like you have to build the whole defense. You know, if you can
and you're probably losing one of your big pass catchers too in the process.
Probably.
You're definitely asking for Pitts or Drake London if you're Baltimore.
Yeah. I mean, if that's off the table in Atlanta and you're only going to pay draft picks, maybe. But you do have the cap space. You could go get stuff. I mean, I like the fit, but I don't think all of a sudden I'd be like, boy, the Falcons are a contender now.
Right. And there's been a little smoke with the Falcons too, for some reason. You never know if any of that's real, but for some reason, the Falcons is a team that's come up with this. And similar to how, the Raiders are like kind of out there. There's some smoke with Aaron Rodgers, and you don't really know why or if it's accurate, but that's what kind of some of the rumors are. And we never, those always aren't accurate, but we'll see. Lamar Jackson, the number one story of the offseason right now.
Who's your Falcon?
My Falcon is Desmond Ridder.
Okay.
Yeah. They drafted him. They developed him.
Yep.
It's time to see what he can do and build the talent on the rest of that roster. So, I've got Desmond Ridder there as the starter for the Atlanta Falcons this year. And it's just a little bit too difficult to place another quarterback there for me unless they're willing to do something crazy. And they just need too much work on the roster to do anything crazy. And Ridder might be the guy.
Yeah, you're kind of shortchanging Ridder, and
yes,
I almost put Ridder as Baltimore starting. Well,
that's the thing. For sure. If I did Lamar to Atlanta, I'd put Ridder in Baltimore, and maybe it's a Ridder in a Garoppolo situation or something like that for Baltimore, and instead of Carr is who I have going to Baltimore. But I liked Ridder too, and so I think he deserves.
I do too. I think that's a distinct possibility. Give him a whole year, give him a whole offseason as a starter, sink everything into defense and stuff around him, and you'll know if you have a quarterback or not.
Absolutely. I have 3 new starters in this division, so we'll get to the other 3 teams here in the NFC South, and we'll talk NFC West starting quarterbacks in 2023 next. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories, and I'm sure that's exactly what you're looking for. It's what everyone should be looking for, right? Then you got to try Built Bar. I know there's, some people maybe have already given up on their New Year's resolutions. I have not. I feel like I'm doing pretty well for myself, actually, Matt, over the course of the last, 6 to 8 weeks here. Nice. And it even started before the new year for me. And February, it's even gotten better. Dry February for me because it is the shortest month of the year. Makes it a little bit easier. I'm going to avoid those Super Bowl parties. I'm going to sit by myself at home and watch the Super Bowl intently, not have any beverages to derail my diet. And when I'm reaching for a snack, it's going to be Built Bars. With Built, you're getting healthy, which is actually tasty. And that's what really makes the difference and sets these Built Bars off. You're getting low calories with high protein, low sugar. That is the combination you need for your diet. And when you want to reach for a snack, you want a delicious snack, and that's what Built Bar hits as well. Most Built Bars covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate that tastes good, not some brown fake colored chocolate stuff. It's real chocolate. Unbelievable flavors that they're able to do with this low calorie protein bar: churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut, almond. Unbelievable. Most Built Bars have only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar, but with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you can start to find Built Bars on your store shelves as well as Built.com. Get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. Walmart pharmacy section, go find yourself a 4-pack of cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puffs. Or at Sam's Club, get the 13-bar box of hit flavors like brownie batter and churro, and then you will thank us later. And of course, you can find all the flavors at Built.com. Okay, finishing up the NFC South here, Matt. We've got the Carolina Panthers, who sit at number 9 in the NFL draft. They got a late-round quarterback last year in Matt Corral, who had an injured season. You could do the Sam Darnold dance again. They did the Mayfield dance already, just a weird quarterback situation, which is probably why they went and got themselves an ex-quarterback coach in head coach Frank Reich. Which direction does Frank Reich go in Carolina for his signal caller?
Yeah, I can't put any stock in Corral. He's just kind of out of sight, out of mind. He's a bonus prize if something works out. Who knows? I have Levis going here, and I also think it'll be Levis and Darnold, Levis and Winston, something along those lines, the Trubisky Pickett mold. And this is an aggressive organization. Maybe they move up a couple spots to grab them, but I think they want to make a splash, and that's Levis.
That's exactly what I have. In column 1, I've got Levis. In column 2, I've got Corral. And you develop the young, you develop the young quarterbacks, and maybe you bring in a veteran as well. Maybe it's just you bring Darnold back for one more run or something like that.
He wasn't horrible.
Right. He wasn't horrible at the end, and he's a known product, but he's not really known to Frank Reich. So maybe Frank Reich brings, who knows, maybe Frank Reich brings in Carson Wentz just to have a sacrificial.
I thought about that.
Get beat out.
Yeah. He's going to land somewhere, and I don't know where.
Wentz got Frank Reich fired before. So unless you have a rookie to take over for Wentz, I don't know if that would be the smart move either. But and looking at how the draft is playing out, I don't think Carolina can necessarily sit at 9 and feel good about getting one of these quarterbacks. But I think it's the most obvious thing when you look at how the draft is going to play out here this year. And you've got a team like, because I almost put Levis at Las Vegas, and they're picking at 7. And I think Carolina, it's just David Tepper's sitting there thinking, hey, what's the plan at quarterback? We got to do something with quarterback. So it's either something big on the trade market, maybe this is Lamar, or it's let's go up in the draft if we have to. We can't do this anymore. We got to go get a quarterback. So I like Carolina to go up in that 5-6 range and go get a quarterback, get in front of some teams, get in front of some other teams that could trade up for a quarterback, get in front of Las Vegas. And to be honest with you, when you look at the draft, 5-6, Seattle and Detroit, those could be quarterbacks too, or a prime spot to trade out for those two teams with the way the talent's falling in the draft and get a similar prospect they were going to get at 5 or 6. If you're looking for a defensive player, a defensive end after the, or defensive lineman after the top 2 guys are gone, they're not going to get to 5 or 6, right? Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, they're not going to be there. Is it that much different at 9 than it would be at 5 or 6? So I really like that for a trade up spot for Carolina, going up and getting a quarterback. Will Levis here for the Panthers.
Yep, I think we agree on that one. Who you got on the Saints?
The Saints is the toughest one. They're the latest in the first round of teams that have a really big need at quarterback, and their cap situation isn't good to go out and pay a lot or for anybody or trade for anybody. So I think this is the team that has the hardest time finding a guy. I've got Jacoby Brissett here as the starter, and in column number 2, I've got Tanner McKee, the Stanford quarterback. That's sort of a late first round. Let's see if we can draft and develop a guy without being in the top 10 of the draft.
I know the finances don't work, but we made the joke the other day of when they got that pick for Peyton that, well, let's have another round at the bar. Let's push the credit cards. Let's max them out. We don't ever, it's always Mardi Gras in New Orleans, as I said. I think they go all in and go get Carr, which is going to be one of the bigger ticket items. Try to run this thing back. Their head coach, Allen, was with Carr for a year with the Raiders. I don't feel super strong about that, but this is an aggressive organization.
There's at least the connection there. I like that connection with Allen to Carr. And when I went through this process, I was it was Saints and Baltimore for Carr. And if
Mhm.
you trade away and who knows, maybe Lamar doesn't get traded, so it's easier to go to the Saints there. But if Carr had his pick, I would think that Baltimore's the more desirable location for him. But I didn't think about the connection there with Allen either. So Carr to New Orleans seems like it's definitely a possibility. And it's definitely been a little bit of smoke there that the Saints have talked about it postseason in their press conference. They're like, we got to figure something out at quarterback. So I think they'll be busy, but they just have a harder time than a lot of these other teams that go in and getting that done.
They do. And Carr might get released, or he might end up costing you a pick, whatever. I just know they're an aggressive organization and they don't want the party to end.
That brings us to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. With the retirement of Tom Brady, they need themselves a quarterback too, and it's not going to be the Blaine Gabbert era, I don't think.
I don't think it's going to be the Trask era either. I mean, there's some rumblings that Trask is going to take over. This was my least favorite fit. I have Jimmy G going here, and he can do Brady things, obviously. I think Tampa, I'm not saying they should go Trask, but I don't think Jimmy's going to make a lot of money. I mean, he's a true free agent, and we've talked about all these teams. There's going to be 5 teams offering him a contract, which means that contract's going to go up, 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 up. And I think Tampa should be tearing it down, 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 as opposed to, trying to put a Band-Aid on things. So I don't like this fit, but I had to put him somewhere. I thought about Washington instead of Tannehill. I thought about New Orleans, but I ended up with Jimmy in Tampa. But it's my least favorite fit.
I've got the same Band-Aid, but I've just got a different name. I got Ryan Tannehill here to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah. He'd be cheaper than Jimmy. That makes a little more sense.
Yes. A little easier. See what you have in Trask, and you can probably try again next year if you're Tampa, if this thing kind of does fall apart. But I think they'll try to keep it going, and it could be a real big rebuild after this year if it doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
That brings us to the NFC West, Matt. Do you have any big movement in the NFC West, starting with the team that still doesn't have a head coach in the Arizona Cardinals?
I have Kyler penciled in here. I don't know if he'll be healthy week 1, snap 1, but he's going to be their starting quarterback. I mean, they better find something, though. Maybe Wentz ends up there, or Mayfield, or whatever, for the offseason / beginning. But they're married to Kyler Murray.
Absolutely. We haven't heard anything about Stafford. There was is he still possibly going to retire? The Rams are in a really weird situation, but Sean McVay.
I get the feel they're running it back. Like, I think Donald and McVay and Stafford and all those guys are going back, and they're going to give it one more shot.
That's the vibe I got too. So Matt Stafford, that's who I have in mind. And until I hear he's going to retire, it's going to be Stafford.
Yes. Seattle's almost the exact same conversation as Detroit, but except Geno's a free agent. I think you bring Geno back, you have 2 firsts like the Lions, and say maybe Revis or Richardson if it works out. If it doesn't, I can live with it. We saw how that went. So I have Geno as the opening day starter there.
Right. And in a past mailbag, someone asked us about Geno Smith as a free agent for other teams. It's like, I don't see a fit for Geno really anywhere. Although when you start to look at some of these teams, maybe a team would like Geno Smith in the Garoppolo mold instead of, some of the other players that they might be signing. But I just don't see any team liking Geno more than Seattle. I don't see Geno having more success anywhere than he's already had in Seattle. So I just don't see a fit of him going anywhere else in free agency. It's kind of like the Giants with Daniel Jones. I don't see big money on the horizon for Daniel Jones anywhere outside of New York. And I don't even think New York should do that necessarily, but it's a similar vibe for Geno Smith. And by the way, I don't have Daniel Jones anywhere.
I was thinking that.
I have no idea where to put him.
I'm sure you're not putting him on the Niners. That's the last team we talk about. So I was sitting there thinking, it's like he's outside looking in. Could happen. I mean, I don't think that's crazy talk.
If anybody who listened to yesterday's episode knows that Trey Lance is no longer a 49er on Matt Williamson's list, so that means it's Brock Purdy for you, right?
It is, and maybe that's Minshew for a while, and then Purdy, something along those lines. But I have Lance getting shipped out, so Purdy's my call here.
Yep, I've got Lance Purdy. This is a competition. Lance is the only healthy guy, and Lance is the more physically talented guy. And he raises the ceiling for the 49ers if he can beat out Brock Purdy. And Brock Purdy's not going to be ready for the first practice of training camp. It looks like we still don't actually have, as of this recording, Tuesday, February 7th, we still don't know what that surgery is going to be. There's second opinions and conversations happening still with Brock Purdy. So we'll find out what that is. More than likely, it's going to be about a 6-month recovery time. So still dicey for his competition with Lance, because Lance is going to have all offseason and Purdy is not. Can he get in there and play some preseason games and just, keep rolling like he did, jumping out of bed as a 7th round rookie? Then it could be Purdy. Without the injury, I would have said Purdy for sure, and Lance more likely to be traded. Still think it's unlikely now that Lance gets traded because of the Purdy injury, but still possible.
Mhm.
And so Lance versus Purdy competition right there. That's what it's all about for the 49ers. And it's going to be some popcorn once training camp and preseason gets going there, once both of those guys are healthy and playing.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before, and that makes perfect sense to me. I could see that strategy. The injury really puts a wrench in things. So last thing I wanted to do is just these 4 little categories I have, which is kind of disheartening a little bit, is the first category I just called real starters. That doesn't mean they're tier 1. Obviously, Mahomes and Allen, those guys are in there. But I included Dak. I included Hurts. Obviously, guys like Herbert. And Stafford was kind of my cutoff. I called him a real starter. I mean, they won the Super Bowl with him 2 years ago. I know he's not the long-term answer, but I got 11 teams with real starters.
And that's a little disrespectful for the non-11 quarterbacks that I think would consider themselves real starters. But you're like, they're these guys. You're not trying to upgrade, really.
Yeah, I have a different category for them. I just called them fine/okay.
Yeah. You're not real,
right?
You're fine.
Goff, Cousins, Carr, Jimmy. I mean, so I included Kyler. I didn't know what to do with him, and I included Russell Wilson in the fine/okay. But Wilson was not fine or okay last year,
Okay.
So I was a little generous with these. Then there was 8 guys that are just young. I mean, they're projects, they're youngsters. Of course, it's Pickett. I have 3 rookies on that list. I included Mac Jones, Fields, even Love is youngsters, projects.
In that tier, it's like you don't stay in that tier. You either elevate to the next tier or the tier above that, or you drop down into the tier below.
Yeah. I mean, there's 8 of them there. 4 will hit, 5 will hit. You know what I mean? 1 will hit big. 1 will be a Zach Wilson disaster. So that's far from a sure thing. And then that left me 2 teams with basically non-starters, like guys I am not comfortable with. And for me, that was Brissett and Dalton, who are fine, but really, I think there's like 30 starting quarterbacks out there. And reality is there's probably only like 24 because some of those rookies are going to be over their head and not true starters. You know what I mean?
It's funny because last offseason, it felt like, man, that we're getting to the point where there's actually more quarterback than teams now. And fast forward another year, and it's like, no, not quite.
Right. Absolutely.
It doesn't happen that way.
Yep. So this was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Let us know what we got right, what we got wrong from what you guys think your teams will do at quarterback in the 2023 season and beyond. Thanks, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen. Make sure you check out everything else the network has to offer. Subscribe to Locked On NFL. And remember, your team is covered right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And get those Twitter questions in as well at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.